The Hundred Years' War between France and England was coming to an end in 1453. The dreaded Earl of Shrewsbury, John Talbot, led the English army in a last-ditch effort to protect Gascony, which had just been taken from the French. The Battle of Castillon, however, was the result of a fierce counterattack by French King Charles VII. In addition to deciding Gascony's fate, this pivotal battle would put an end to the protracted hostilities between the two countries. With a force of 3,000 English soldiers, John Talbot, the Earl of Shrewsbury, landed close to Bordeaux on October 17, 1452. John Talbot was a well-known and feared military leader who had the support of the residents of the town. On October 23rd, Talbot captured the city of Bordeaux with ease. By the end of the year, the majority of western Gascony was under English rule. Although the French were aware that an English expedition was approaching, they had anticipated that it would pass through Normandy. Following this surprise, King Charles spent the winter preparing his army, and by the beginning of 1453, he was prepared to launch a counterattack. With three distinct armies en route to Bordeaux, King Charles invaded the recently English-ruled region of France. Approximately 10,000 French soldiers marched to fight in all. Castillon, a little castle about 40 kilometers east of Bordeaux, was finally besieged by the French. King Charles ordered Officer Jean Bou to command the French army on July 8th and set up the camp to optimize French artillery power in a defensive configuration. Castillon's guns couldn't reach the artillery park that Bureau's forces had constructed. There were numerous firearms of all sizes in the park. The men in charge of Castile were able to inform the English that the French were thereby sending out messengers through the siege. In the meantime, Talbot was bolstered by 3,000 more men under the command of John the Viscount Leu, his favorite son. This was the moment when Talbot got the messages from Castillon's town officials. He decided to relieve the garrison instead of waiting for additional reinforcements at Bordeaux. Talbot departed Bordeaux on July 16th. Although the rest of the army was still catching up, John Talbot outran most of his forces as he marched to meet the French, arriving at Libor with just 500 men-at-arms and 800 archers. A French detachment is attacked by the English. The next day, a small group of French archers stationed nearby were attacked by the English. As they advanced, the English were shielded from the French arrow fire by their heavy armor. This small force of French archers was easily routed by the English, who had no infantry support. The French and English marched to meet Talbot, now overconfident after his victory, pushed his men forward to the French camp near Castillon, believing the rest of his men would arrive soon, despite earlier plans to wait for reinforcements. The French camp was reached by Talbot's force on July 17th. By this time, Talbot had about 2,000 men with him, while the remaining 5,000 men made up the English army, which was now following closely behind. Talbot advanced, despite having few soldiers, because he heard that the French were pulling back. He believed the French were disorganized and wanted to attack. However, the full scope of the French preparations was unknown to the English. The approximately 8,000-man French force was ready and well prepared for the English assault. The bombardment from France. The English encountered a devastating volley of artillery fire as they advanced. With their careful placement and skillful handling, the French cannons ripped through the English ranks. The English soldiers' formations were upset, and their ability to launch a successful attack was all but destroyed by the cannon fire, which also caused confusion and chaos among them. Talbot led his men into the thick of the fighting after dismounting, realizing the danger but refusing to give up. Given that Talbot had already ordered his men to fight before realizing the strength of the French position, it is hypothesized that his seemingly careless actions may have been motivated by the fact that his pride and honor were on the line. The English succeeded in reaching the French lines despite the odds against them. The French saw a chance to counterattack as the English attack started to wane. Previously kept in reserve, French cavalry now stormed out of the camp and launched an assault on the disarrayed English forces. The English troops, who were already feeling the effects of the artillery barrage, were further demoralized by this unexpected and well-timed attack. The cavalry and artillery combination was overwhelming. Talbot was caught amid the fighting after dismounting to fight with his men. He tried to rally his troops, but he was killed in the melee. The pressure from the French attack caused the remaining English forces to rapidly disintegrate. This was among the first times in European combat history that artillery was a key factor in deciding a battle's outcome. The battle was essentially over by the time the main English force arrived. They had defeated the advanced force. Approximately 2,000 English soldiers were dead by the end of the conflict. The French suffered far fewer casualties, perhaps only a few hundred. After arriving on the battlefield and realizing the magnitude of the loss, the main English force refrained from fighting. The following day, the men were captured when the main English force surrendered. The French barraged Caisson with artillery the day after the battle, and the defenders turned themselves in as prisoners of war on July 19th. English power in Gascony declined after Talbot's death and the fall of his army, and on October 19th, the French retook Bordeaux. The Hundred-Year War between England and France, the longest-running conflict in English history, came to an end with this battle. Except for the Channel Islands and the Pale of Calais, the last English possession in mainland France, the English crown lost all of its continental holdings. The Channel Islands are still British crown dependencies today, having lost Calais in 1558.